My name's Matt Pratten. I'm the Senior Regional Analyst for Europe here at Intelligence Fusion, and on this episode of The Insight I'll provide a threat assessment for the top 3 threats for European businesses for 2022. There's always numerous ways to do it, but one of the tried and tested ways is to look at a threat in terms of assessing capability and intent. And you look at those two factors, and that will provide a way to determine what kind of threat exists and how severe. For Europe in 2022, probably the top threat at the moment would be COVID-19 regulations and policies. Now, as a physical threat, that's a sort of term to sort of describe various governments, public servants and law enforcement agencies which create and enforce COVID-19 rules and regulations across Europe as a way to address the pandemic. So in terms of looking at capability, capability of these rules and regulations is assessed as extreme. Now, with various lockdowns and other rules, these have the capability to have a significant impact on business operations in just about any industry. Lockdowns, of course, close businesses down completely. Social distancing requirements can reduce capacity, and various other rules and regulations will affect in just about every other way a business can operate and not just operate profitably, but just simply operate. When you look at sort of the intent behind these rules and regulations, that is assessed to be high. So a lot of the rules and regulations are done with the intent, the desire and expectance to address the pandemic. At the time of this briefing, current cases, which has often been the justification for COVID-19 rules and regulations, cases currently stand across Europe at approximately 138 million. Now, when you look at that, the rules and regulations are being imposed on that basis, but there's a lot of nuances regarding recoveries, instances surrounding deaths, and in terms of other sort of impacts, there's been cases where there's reports have indicated the economic impacts of, say, impacts on real GDP growth. It's estimated at the moment to be at least 3 times worse than what occurred with the 2008 financial crisis. The various rules and regulations has caused a lot of business closures of just about of any size across Europe, and also there's been problems with rising unemployment, massive public spending, which is creating a bit of an inflation crisis. And there's continued evidence to show that the economic impacts on the basis of COVID-19 rules and regulations continue to sort of have a bit of a snowball effect. Yet, despite the reports showing the impacts, the rules and regulations continue to be imposed on the basis of cases alone. Now, there's been some recent developments surrounding the easing of restrictions, say in the UK, France, and Scandinavia. But when looking at sort of what's been happening over the past 2 years, the instances of snap lockdowns, sort of lockdowns at short notice, can create some significant impacts on any kind of business strategy or operating procedures. So overall, when looking at sort of the threat of COVID-19 rules and regulations, considering extreme capability and high intent, overall that sort of creates a situation where COVID-19 rules and regulations present an extreme threat to businesses across Europe. Probably the second biggest threat for businesses across Europe for this year would be activism. In terms of capability of activist groups, it can actually range. It will depend on the group. So at the moment, it appears to range from medium to high. For example, various climate change activist groups will engage in protests and direct action, which can shut down business operations, or cause significant impacts on logistics capabilities. With say, for example, the various protests that occurred along the M25 in London by Insulate Britain, that caused significant problems with traffic and, of course, logistics. And that tactic appears to have been beginning to migrate across Europe. We've seen various instances of blockades in Rome by Extinction Rebellion, And Fridays for Future has been employing that tactic in Vienna, Vienna, Austria recently as well. Then the anti-lockdown movements. Now, most of the time, they'll focus their efforts on protest marches, but the large numbers of people that will go to these protests, that can create some problems just with the sheer size and numbers. And there's efforts by extremist elements. In the case of, say, more sort of left-wing groups like Extinction Rebellion, Greenpeace, and Fridays for Future, there's been occasions in Vienna recently, for example, where Antifa groups joined in with Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future. As for anti-lockdown movements, there's what can occur in those cases is there'll be efforts to either infiltrate or participate by various far-right groups. Probably the most significant one that's happened so far was the one on October 9 last year, where a No Green Pass protest in Rome, that appears to have been hijacked by the neo-fascist party Forza Nuova. And what resulted from that actually was, rather than become just an anti-lockdown protest or anti-mandate protest, it became a night-long riot. And what occurs there is that businesses either attending the protests because, well, lockdowns have had enormous impacts on their operations, or those who would be sympathetic towards anti-lockdown movements, there's an element of reputational damage as a form of guilt by association. As for intent, actually, that brings me to sort of intent-wise, across the board for activism across Europe, currently assessing that to be extreme. For the reason for that is that from what I can tell, all groups, all movements, sort of across the board, they have a sort of extreme in terms of desire and expectance. They have a desire to keep going, and they expect that their cause will have the desired end state. That is regardless of whether they're right or wrong. So overall, the overall threat for activism across Europe for 2022 for businesses, it can range from high to extreme. Number 3 would probably be Russian natural gas firms. So natural gas from Russia is an economic center of gravity for businesses operating across Europe. Europe is heavily dependent on natural gas, and from what I've been able to find, the imports from Russia make up about between 31 to 40% of natural gas bought and consumed across the continent. So, and as we've sort of shown in prior analysis, a lot of these Russian natural gas firms can be very susceptible to influence from the Russian government, and that creates a bit of a problem, because a vital source of energy for businesses and consumers alike actually is susceptible to being used as a form of statecraft, as we sort of explained in analysis on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. In terms of capability, the capability of Russian natural gas firms as a threat is assessed to be high. There's a strong potential that Russian natural gas firms will use the natural gas they supply as an economic weapon. And with the dependency, this creates a significant problem, as if the supplies from Russia reduce or cease completely, the remaining supply elsewhere at the moment doesn't appear to be capable of supplanting that demand. And of course, basic economics with law of supply and demand, if you have a huge demand and a short supply, the price for that good or service is going to go up and up and up. And with developments that we continue to look at across Europe regarding natural gas, probably the most significant one we're coming across at the moment is developments surrounding the Yamal pipeline. Now, from mid-December last year, we started noticing that the Gazprom stopped booking capacity on that pipeline to send gas from Russia into Western Europe, and that situation has been occurring since December. But even more recently, however, there was a situation where the Cascade plant reported that Gazprom had actually booked an 8-hour window on the Yamal pipeline, but no supplies went from Russia into Western Europe. So what occurred there was the pipeline was booked for capacity, no gas went through, and because the pipeline had been booked, European natural gas firms elsewhere couldn't actually send supplies along that pipeline as well. So for an 8-hour window, it looked like all natural gas firms had been completely cut out of that pipeline. In terms of the intent, I would assess that as high as well, with developments surrounding Nord Stream 2, the Yamal pipeline, and of course surrounding Belarus, Ukraine, and the Russian military activity that's been occurring. From what I understand about the intention behind such activities by Russian natural gas firms, the high assessment is based on the fact it appears that their intention appears to be having the desired and expected effect. It's forcing a lot of European countries to consider making providing much more favourable conditions towards the Russian government. So considering the high capability and high intent, that provides an overall threat assessment as Russian natural gas firms present a high threat to businesses across Europe for 2022. It will, for this year and for many more years to come, it will likely be necessary for businesses to keep a very close eye on developments surrounding natural gas in order to mitigate any kind of impacts that the supply of natural gas could have on their operations, on their people, assets and reputation at short notice. These are the top three threats that we're sort of assessing at the time, but we always keep an eye on lots of other developments occurring across Europe. I mean, there's, cybercrime incidents have often been something we keep an eye on, as they can have a particularly significant effect on any kind of business, or government departments as well, for that matter. And even more so, there's just the simple element of uncertainty in intelligence work. So, not to mention that further reporting may actually may change the nature of the top three threats that we're assessing at the moment.